Hello and welcome to The Healing Way. My name is Richard Clark, and on this video I'd like to talk about the brain and the mind and the relationship between the two, and my own personal perceptions of how they are used or how they use themselves. Okay, let's start with the situation as it is at the moment. We have a brain, a functioning brain, that creates the mind in association with the ego, which seems to be an outside force or power. This isn't as strange as it might sound, but I'm going to leave that to one side for the moment, just so, and perhaps have a look at it later, but for the minute I want to carry on with this. So, mind, brain creates mind in conjunction with ego. So we have this energy construction, which we call mind, and that indicates that the brain has tremendous abilities with energy. It can actually fabricate or manufacture what we call mind, and I would agree with this because this is something I saw many years ago, decades ago. The brain has fantastic abilities to utilise and manoeuvre or manipulate energy. So the brain creates the mind. Embedded in the mind later on comes personality, comes self, personal self. So we have a step down process: brain, mind, personal self, or the individual. And this is all overseen or in association with a power or energy that I'm calling ego, but it's something that has to be looked at in much greater detail. I don't know if it's is connected to health. I restrict myself to healing issues because it's very easy to go off into philosophical tangents about the why for the where. But I want to stay on target, which for me is healing, health, or more accurately fixing people. It's fixing the problems. Health comes from the person. It's the person who has control over their health. An outsider can only fix or repair. Yeah? This is something else I'll go into at another point, another time. So the current situation is brain, mind, personal self. Now, the personal self, within this field, within the field of the mind and the personal self, is thought, memory, intellect, the scientific view, the scientific approach, which is separate. The scientific view or approach is one of isolation, one of being what they call objective or removed from what they're looking at. And this is because it's a reflection of the mind itself, which is in isolation, is separate from everything else. It's a manufactured artifact. It's a manufactured construction by the brain. So these things tend to reflect what they are, and everything within the mind also will work in isolation. Memory and thought, the intellect, these things all act in isolation. Understanding, which is a process within the mind. So we have the mind with its the way it works, its tools, if you like, the memories and the intellectual approach, the science, analytical. This is how it looks. The mind looks into the world through this construct. So the mind is a construct. It constructs its tools, its analytical view, its scientific view, its isolated view, and it's through this it looks into the world. And that view, which is very small, very isolated, very particular, becomes the view. There is nothing else to the mind, because there is nothing else. It is because it is an artificial false creation, false in the sense that it has no real life or meaning or continuity in itself. Because of that, it's exclusive. It cannot see anything other than itself and its own view, its own way of looking at things, which is very, very small. There is no perception, no intuition, no insight, no realisation. None of that exists within this mind with its way of looking at things, with its way of doing things. Because it is artificial and mechanical, it acts in an artificial and mechanical way. And if you look into the world, you'll see that the world of science is very mechanical, it is very technical, and this is again an expression of this mind, the tools, the mind and the tools that the mind uses, analysis, thought, memory, all these things, which are all very useful. They're very useful at a certain level. The problem is, it's the only thing we've got now. It's the only thing we've got, the only thing we use, and instead of being at the final level, to translate all the insights, all the realisations, all the reflections and the contemplation, all the higher stuff, which then feeds into this level to be expressed on the physical level. These are physical things. The mind is a physical thing for expression in the physical world, but the brain doesn't operate on the physical world, which is why it might create the mind. This is what I want to get at. Why the brain does this, and is there a better way? So all this is very necessary. You know, if you want to, you see it in the world. You see all the technological advances, all the scientific advances, and these are marvellous things. Nobody's denying that. This isn't about this is bad, let's go to something else. This is about, this is what it is, but that's all it is. What about the other stuff, the huge, vast stuff that the brain is tapped into, the brain is part of, but we never get to, because we are totally isolated in this small mind with its mental outlook and its provincial way of looking at things. The mind as it is just for the physical world. It's not for the other stuff. It can't penetrate the other stuff, and the only thing it can do to justify its own existence is to deny the other stuff. And this is very much how we're getting now. We deny everything. You know, this, if it's not proven by science, it doesn't exist. Okay, so that's the situation. Brain, mind, personal self. Now the personal self becomes embedded in this structure, in this creation, which is another artificial thing. The mind then starts taking on attributes. I have likes, dislikes. This is my personality. This is me, and that's embedded in the mind. And we've got personal self, and then the personal self starts thinking. So it becomes more and more abstract down the line. So we have a situation where the brain is trying to communicate to this structure, to the mind and the personal self. The brain is trying to communicate so it can express itself, but the mind is in a very much a denial thing. It's denying everything it receives that isn't mechanical or scientific or technological. It doesn't do inspiration, it doesn't do insight, creativity, realisation, none of that. It doesn't do any of that, because it's mechanical. It's no access to that which is living and fluid. Okay, and this isn't a criticism, don't get me wrong, I'm just outlining the situation as I perceive it, as I said. Now then, let's go to another question. Why does the brain do this? Why does the brain create all this. And it seems to do it right from the start. As soon as a person's born, the brain starts creating mind, or at least mind seems to come into existence pretty early on, maybe a year or two of a person's, from a person being born. Now it seems to me this is the brain going to a default position. It's a default position where it cannot get the better position. The better position is for the brain to directly communicate itself through the body into the world. So there is a direct communication without any mind, without any thought, without anything. There is just, or at least if there is mind and thought, it is just right at the very base level. Right? So the brain should work through the mind, or no, that ain't right. See, what I'm looking at is why the mind comes into existence at all. If there's no mind, there's no personal self, which is always causing problems. It is always interfering with the processes of the brain. So, alright, why does the brain bring this in? It seems to me it's a better option if the brain can just work directly. Now, how does the brain work directly? It works directly to the physical. The brain is in two areas. One is the physical. It communicates to the physical, and the other one is the non-physical, where the creation comes from, and the insights, and the understanding is not. It don't really go far enough. Understanding conveys the conventional meaning. Real insight, real understanding is something completely different. It's linked to realisation. It follows on from realisation. To have an understanding without a realisation is it's like having a cart with one wheel on it. It doesn't happen. If we call something like that understanding, it isn't. It's just really just thought again, just extending itself in some manner. Okay, so it seems to me the brain works through images, and it's connected to the non-physical, let's say, and it works through the physical into the world. So the non-physical works through the brain into the world, through the body into the world. Now the brain works along with this. It goes along with this. It's a collaborator or a partner, or it works with what comes through it. Yeah, what it looks like is we can't. The brain works through images. So if we can just switch off the mind and the thought and the me and the, what's in it for me, what's my personal advantage in all this, how much money can I make out of all this, how will people see me, what's the fame involved. If we can switch all that off, all the things that motivate people, this is what we've come to. If there's no money involved, we're not interested. If there's no fame or whatever it is, we're not interested. Sorry, it's just difficult at times. So can all that be switched off and the brain communicates directly with the physical organism through images? It's almost like, the brain receives from outside what's needed, converts that into images that another part of the brain then can move along with. That's possibly a better way of putting it. Now, while I've been talking, what I've been seeing is that we can't go to this directly. It'd be nice if we could just bypass all this whole mess of mind and personal self and just stick with brain and images. The reason why the brain works through images is because it hasn't got a language. Whatever language you think in, you've acquired that since you was born. But images are always there. There are always images, and images can be understood non-verbally. So this is the, I think language is embedded into the mind. So if we are going to work without language, which means we're working without thought, we're going to have to switch to images. So we interpret images. That can be a bit tricky because obviously interpretation, one person's interpretation isn't going to be another person's. But this is where now I'm trying to go with this. It's like two tracks. One is the established track, the old order of mind and thought, and there's this new track which is completely just the brain expressing itself in images. And then there's an interesting thing where you could say, well, the brain expresses itself conventionally through mind, through thought, so the brain is talking to the person, the self, like you listen to what you're thinking. But what is it that's listening? What's listening is just another construct of, or a subdivision of mind. So mind thinks, and then it's got another part of itself which calls itself self, which is listening to the thinking. It really is a bizarre process. I think it's a necessary one because, as I say, while I've been sitting here talking, it's occurred to me that we can't stick with brain and images and expression. We need to go through the other process of mind and thought. I think that is needed. It's needed in a technological sense. But to go back to being purely creative and purely with images, which at its higher level is spontaneity, is just to spontaneously do what comes through. To do that, I think we need to go into the other and then come out of it to understand this brain and images thing. So as I say, two directions. One is the conventional mind and thought, and the other one is just the brain and images. And the more I look at things over the years, the most important thing is the brain. It always comes back to the brain. The brain does everything. The brain communicates. The mental energy of the brain drives the body, drives the immune system. The brain, as I say, it fabricates mind. It connects at all different levels, all the different levels that are out there, all the different areas. The brain can connect to them. We don't even know it's doing this because we, in a sense, don't really exist. We are a fabrication or an illusion created by the mind, which is created by the brain. The brain has fantastic control and abilities with energy, and that is amazing. But as I say, if you take away the mind and the personal me, when the brain is trying to communicate, who is it communicating to? You've got the brain and it's trying to communicate. So all I can see or think here is that the brain, through images, communicates from one level outside of the body, or what it receives from outside the body, to the body's level. So the brain is communicating within itself from high to low. Once it hits the low, which is our level, the physical level, then there is expression out into the world. It's very hard to do this because it means breaking with convention. If you've got a group of people who are all tuned into each other and all talking on the same wavelength, and it's all thought and engineering and technology, it's so easy to join in. You can just join in and make a contribution and be appreciated and respected and accepted, and it's lovely because you're part of a group, you're part of it, you know, and there's this lovely warm feeling and you belong and you join. But to break out of that and to just not be part of that, and then the mind will say, or the mind will then, through images, will just show something different if it feels appropriate. And then all the people who are talking together go off together, and you go off somewhere else because that's your direction. The main difference here is that what the group will do is they'll extend what they already know. So the group of people will talk over what they know already, and then someone will come up with a way of extending it. They'll make a better way of doing it. But the person whose brain works through images, or the person who actually watches or perceives the images and lets the images, the strength of the images, the energy of the images, because the brain puts energy into the images. As I say, the brain has this control over energy. So it doesn't just show you a picture. Within the picture is the energy to give that process, to set that image into process, to give it life, to give it expression into the world. And that then is when things become really interesting, because instead of people all talking the same, thinking the same, acting the same, joining in the same, instead of that, everybody is just chucking out ideas. Not ideas, but these, it comes in, it goes out. No interference. We're just throwing out all these things that other people are picking up on and going, yeah, and they run with it. But the point is, these things are not complete in themselves. They can be, but inevitably they need others to pick up on them. It's similar to what I'm doing here. I'm throwing out all these ideas, all these ways, all these methods, all these talks, all these videos, and people will pick up on them. They'll watch them and go, oh yeah, I can see what he's saying, but I would do it like this. Which is great, because that's the point, isn't it? It's personal expression. It's not just healing or fixing, as I'm starting to think of it now. Healing comes from the person, fixing comes from outside, or repair comes from outside. But the person will only heal themselves when they're ready to. They might have genuine reasons for not being well. And so long as they feel they've got genuine reasons, they'll stay where they are, no matter how much fixing gets done or repair gets done. Anyway, it's been a very enjoyable video, this. I've really enjoyed doing it. It's been something that's been working its way through for a few weeks, and it's these two different paths. As I say, the mind and thought and experience and belief and idea and knowledge, memory, technology, all this, which becomes, even though it's a small version, a small outlook, I think it's small, it's become the only way of looking at things. It's become the version, so there's no other way of looking at it. And we look, our brains and our minds look through the world through all this screening, and that's how we perceive the world. It's a distorted view. Or there's a completely clear view where there's an image, the image is expressed, and out it goes. And people pick up on it. It's much clearer, cleaner, more accurate. It's an accurate response to what's needed. You cannot think an adequate response to what's needed, an adequate or accurate response to what is needed. By the time you think it through and you talk it over and everything else, the moment's gone, and whatever you come up with is only going to be small, because it's part of us. It comes from the small. It comes from a small part of human existence. The big part is everything out, just expression of energy, which the brain has given its, not a pattern, but it's given the means to do the job. It's the image and the energy together are complete. They just flow out, and they're everything. There's nothing missed. It's not like for 20 years we threw rubbish into the ground and didn't worry about it. Now all of a sudden there's a big panic on because we need to recycle everything. It's like we're drowning in our own waste. Image would not have done that. Image would have seen the complete picture right from the start. Thought will only see, that's an example of a small thing. You know, we technology, we do this, it's great. we got this. The fact that there's all this damage going on elsewhere, well, never mind that. Let other people worry about that in 20 years' time. Well, we are worrying about that now. And this is how things are going to go on. The incomplete view, which is mind and thought, and knowledge and analysis and all the rest of it, everything that's within the mind, is only going to cause problems because it's only going to be partial. And within that mind is always personal advantage. What's in it for me, or my group, or my people, or my country, or whatever it is. The personal advantage. Yeah? With brain acting through images, there is no personal advantage. There is no nothing. There is nothing in it for the individual. That has to be pushed aside, forgotten. Yeah? Because that will distort what comes through. If you just look to see what's in it for you, or your group, or whatever it is, your family, your nation state, your religion, whatever it is, whatever it's in it for that, or you, or your... No, it will just distort it, and the image will just become another part of mind, which becomes self-serving. I think in time, if there's enough, if a person's brain, if you can go down this other road, and it just becomes brain and images, all the rest of it will just dissolve. All the rest of it will just break up, and you will then be a living being in the living present. You won't be in an abstract world living in the past, in an artificial world, an artificial state, with always in the past trying to catch up. The living brain with living energy in the living now. And that is a beautiful state. That was a beautiful state. And it's not that hard to do, because maintaining this whole structure of mind and thought and everything else, it requires tremendous effort and energy. It's tremendous. The brain is going night and day producing all this. But it's almost like the brain has to see that it's not working out. The brain, something within us, non-self, something within us has to accept that there is a different way, which is not based on effort, which is not based on analysis or trying or pushing or anything. You just do it. Anyway, that's probably a long enough video. If you've got to the end, well done. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed this one, it was really good. I'll give some thought to some more stuff as time goes on. Thank you very much for viewing. Hope to see you again, or hope you'll see me again.